Joining us in studio now is Tom Djokovic. Tom is the CEO of XsunX Incorporated. XSNX is their stock symbol. Tom, always good to see you.
Thanks for having me back, Don.
Well, Tom, one of the things that we had talked about before we went on the air was how the company had started moving into the residential solar industry. How's that shaping up so far?
Well, Don, the residential space is a great little space. As you know, we did focus on commercial for quite a while, and we've been developing our capacities in the residential space, primarily working at lead generation, what works best. And we're pretty excited about some new opportunities we put in place through essentially affiliation type of networks where people are already affiliated with a particular service provider, and we're going ahead and entering into agreements with these affiliates to go ahead and market our service to them, and we're excited about that because we see we're already seeing a better result, a better response rate through that opportunity rather than through direct mailers or newspaper advertising, or even worse, internet-based lead generation through call centers. Those are just highly competitive spaces, lots of bad data.
Well, let's be frank. You can't drive a car in Southern California with the radio on for an hour, not hear 2 or 3 solar commercials. And everybody seems to be offering something different, some new incentive, some new program, different results. How do you compete in that space?
Well, Don, it's pretty typical. Marketing is to offer all kinds of giveaways, but the reality is somehow the consumer is always going to pay for it. If they're offering to include rebates that don't currently exist anymore, that's getting tacked onto the price somewhere. If they're offering an abnormally low interest rate, that's getting tacked onto the price somewhere. I mean, we see these kinds of deals, these kinds of lending programs. We try to stay away from them. We've got lending programs that let you go ahead and monetize your tax benefit to pay down the principal amount of your purchase, and even finance it as much as over a 30-year period. There's some great programs, excellent interest rates, and they really offer the best value to the consumer. And we try to stay away from all the gimmicks because those just tack back onto the price and increase the overall cost of the system. So long term, you're actually paying more for these little upfront benefits.
How would you gauge the receptiveness of the residential solar customer to the commercial solar customer that you're obviously very familiar with?
Well, it's real simple. I mean, it's the same thing in the building space. I've been a builder for years, probably a land developer as well, and anything that deals with residential is more of an emotional purchase. And that same client can own a business, own a building, and it becomes an analytical type of decision-making process for the business. So it's fundamentally 2 different categories. People think like a business analytically about the investment on a business level, and residents tend to be a little bit more emotional about it. They tend to focus more on the excitement of producing their own electricity and telling the utility to take a hike, while a business is really looking at the bottom line numbers. That's what means more to them than anything. In reality, on both sides, the equation is probably the end result's the same. How much am I saving?
And it really becomes the same sales presentation. I mean, at some point, you're going to own that system outright after the financing has been satisfied, and at that point on, your electricity is free.
Well, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, another thing with residential transactions is the projects are always much smaller. So the costs are much lower, and you're not going to a commercial client and saying you're going to spend $250,000, $500,000, or $1 million on a system. You're spending $15,000 to $35,000 on a system. The payback's usually 5 to 7 years. We could put people in the green typically in year 1 and keep them in the green in terms of positive cash flows permanently from that point forward with a 15, 20, even 30-year financing programs.
Now, you just kind of answered my next question, but I didn't want to reiterate that. So basically, in the residential market, it's even a little bit easier to show somebody they can save money from day one, even though they're paying on a financing program.
Absolutely. Absolutely, especially with some of the financing programs out there, with the kinds of terms, where they allow you to monetize the 30% tax benefit. So if you get a $10,000 system, $3,000 tax credit, you could use that $3,000 tax credit when you get it back to pay down the principal. Now you're only financing $7,000. Your payments can be much lower, and so your ability to be positive cash flow, to have a bill that's less than what you were spending on Edison originally, is much greater. The opportunity for that is very real at that point.
Fascinating industry. It's been really interesting watching you grow with it. Again, XsunX Incorporated, XSNX is their stock symbol. Tom, thanks so much.
Thank you, Don.